Pallavi, and today we will be talking about biology actually, and our today's topic is life process. So before starting on to life process, I want to talk about the two words, that is life and process. If we break down life and process, what does life, if we talk about life, what do we mean by life? Now in our very lower classes, we have always known that life is something that grows, right, or anything that can breathe, grow and reproduce. So all living beings have life. Apart from that, if we go for process are some activities, those activities that lead to maintenance of that life going on. So all the basic activities that are performed in a living organism for its maintenance or for its better sustenance is called the process, and it's totally, if you bring together both the words, it will be life process. Now as we have talked, life process is all the different activities that comprises or helps you to sustain the life. In a organism, that organism can be a only single cell, for example amoeba, or it can be a giant elephant. Now rather it is a small cell or a giant animal, the main basic processes that they undergoes are like nutrition, respiration, digestion, transportation, excretion. There are multiple other processes that goes on, but I am focusing on these because like the first thing that for an activity to undergo, a person or any living organism will require some amount of energy. Now that energy, where are you going to get? That energy is going to be there from the food that you take. The food that we take and utilize is the basic process where nutrition comes in. Nutrition comes from the word nutrient, and nutrient is nothing but three basic nutrients that our body require, that is your carbohydrates, proteins and fats. Now when we take food, the body can't take it as in, like I have eaten pulses, the pulse cannot be running in my body, right? So what I need is, I need to break down that food. For breaking down that food, I have a process called digestion. So I'll come to that later. First we will be talking about nutrition, okay? If I only talk about living beings, then there will be plants, animals and also microorganisms, right? Now you might know what are microorganisms. Microorganisms are the ones which cannot be seen by our naked eyes. First process that we are going to discuss is the nutrition, okay? As I have already said, nutrition is the taking up of food and its utilization for gaining of energy. Now first thing we will read on this nutrition part is your modes of nutrition, how we are going to take the food. Different organisms take different modes of nutrition. First, they are separated into two parts, that is autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. Now if I go for autotrophs, auto means automatically, means they will make their own food. Heterotroph, they are dependent on different organisms or different living organisms for their food. Now in autotrophs, the main example we all know is plants. When I talk about plants, a very interesting phenomena that occurs in plants is your photosynthesis, right? And we have studied in our earlier classes what is photosynthesis, we well know. Here if we break down the two words, it's light and this is genesis, means formation. In the autotrophic mode of nutrition, what we do is, the plants will take the energy from the light and it will be further used to create a carbohydrate. As I have called you, the nutrient that I require is carbohydrate. The carbohydrate that they produce is glucose, and in a larger term if we talk about, the glucose will be further stored in the form of starch. Now I have written a word here, anabolism. This is a very important term if you look into perspective of life processes. Actually, all those processes that are going on in your body, any kind of physical or chemical changes for the production of energy is called metabolism. Under metabolism, The anabolism is a pathway where the process where we create or we prepare or we form the chemical. Okay, here plants will produce, it will not reduce, it will produce our glucose by the help of the process called photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is a anabolic pathway. Okay, photosynthesis is an anabolic pathway, and later I will be going deep into what is photosynthesis. Okay, the next nutrition is your heterotrophic mode of nutrition, where the organism is dependent on other sources rather than it cannot prepare their own food. Here there are three different types mainly. First is your holozoic, parasitic and saprophytic. Now if I look into holozoic, they are dependent on complex food, depends on complex foods. Okay, they will rather take this food and they will break down. Parasitic is kind of, they are totally dependent on different organism. For example, if I give lice, they are parasites actually. They will not harm the other organism, they will not kill the other organism, but they will take the food from the other organism. Saprophytes, they depend on dead organisms. Okay. In this term, the example will be fungi or bacteria. Many bacteria and fungi depend on other organisms for their food. Holozoic, we come under holozoic. All the secondary, primary, tertiary consumers all come under holozoic. Depends on holozoic complex food. Now, when we take complex food, okay, I want to relate this complex food to my nutrients. When I am talking about nutrition, if my complex food that I am taking is a pulse or a dal or something like roti, paratha, anything, that will be comprises of carbohydrate, protein or fats. Now my body cannot take this food into its system in this forms. So for this I need to break it down. So for breaking it down, there are some biochemical enzymes, okay, and these enzymes helps to break this complex food to your simpler ones. Now carbohydrate will be broken down into glucose, proteins into amino acids and fats into fatty acids. Okay. Now to happen this, like carbohydrates will be broken down, this will be the mode that I was talking about. Here it was preparation of glucose, right? They were preparing the photosynthesis, they were preparing glucose, but here I am breaking it down to glucose. How? And this process will be called catabolism. Catabolism means breakdown. Here anabolism means formation. So this is a two different pathway which comes under your metabolism, life processes. Now here to break down this carbohydrate, proteins, fat, that the complex food that we take, there is another process, and that process is your digestion. So in digestion what happens is, there are again multiple steps before that, but simply if I talk about the complex food is broken down into your simpler food. Firstly, you will have to intake the food, right? You will take in the food from what? The organ that is used is your mouth. Now my digestion starts with your mouth with an enzyme called amylase, okay, and that is from a gland called salivary gland, and that salivary gland releases salivary amylase. Now what this amylase do is breaks down the carbohydrate, or you can say starch, that actually the food where we eat are mostly from plants, and that food comprises of starch, and this starch is broken down into your glucose. Actually maltose, if I go into detail, it will be mostly maltose. Glucose is the most simpler one, maltose has two disaccharides, okay. This digestion starts in your mouth. it goes through your esophagus. What is your esophagus? In your esophagus, that is your food pipe, okay? There is a very important activity that undergoes, that is called peristaltic movement. Peristaltic movement. This peristaltic movement is very important because the food is transported through your food chain by this movement only, okay? Through this contraction and then expansion, contraction and then expansion. When it contracts, the food is again come down, and then expand, it again goes down. So that way the food is passed down, or this is not totally digested one, it's partially digested. It is now, that goes, second part is my stomach, okay? It's a very important one. It's kind of a first barrier also to my immune system. How does it do that? In immune system, the first barrier, if I talk about, is the microorganisms. If I have to talk about microorganisms, they are going in with my food, and I don't want that microorganism in my body. So what I can do is, in my stomach, it's totally built up. There is called gastric juices, okay? And these juices, what they do? They will kill the microorganisms. This was in terms of your immune system. Now, in terms of your food, what happens? There is, in the gastric juices, it comprises of your HCl, mucus, and your pepsin. And this HCl, this gives an environment in the stomach for the breakdown of proteins with the help of pepsin. Pepsin will require an acidic environment inside the stomach for it to get breakdown. Then mucus. What does mucus do? Because HCl is very acidic, so that it doesn't hamper the inner layers of your stomach, so it prevents the inner lining of your stomach from destruction, from damage, okay? HCl provides the acidic environment, and this acidic environment is required for pepsin. Pepsin will break down what? Pepsin will break down your proteins to amino acids, okay? So this is a very important, crucial digestion that takes place in your stomach. Keep a thing in your mind that in your stomach there is no digestion of your carbohydrates, okay? The next part, that is your small intestine, where the total digestion in the human system happens. In the human digestive system, third is your small intestine. And the small intestine, there are few glands that helps, that is your liver and your pancreas. Now what does this liver secretes? This liver secretes bile juice, and this bile juice is alkaline in nature, okay, and bile juice will help in the emulsification of fat globules. What is this emulsification means? These are very large molecules, okay, and these large fat molecules are broken down into small tiny fat molecules, so that further digestion can happen on these. So these are further acted upon by lipase, and this lipase enzyme comes from your pancreas. Pancreas secretes three things. One is your lipase, one is your pancreatic juice, we call it together, and trypsin, okay, and together they will give this lipase what will do? It will degrade this fat molecules to your fatty acids, okay. This trypsin, what will this trypsin do? This trypsin will do your break down the protein that comes into your amino acids, and there is amylase that will further break down it into glucose, okay. So in the small intestine, proper digestion of our food has taken place. The lipase will break down my fats to fatty acids, trypsin will break down it into amino acids, amylase to glucose. So as a result, I got my monomers. Actually these are called monomers, and then they will be taken up by my body, and that process is another process that is called your assimilation. So in the small intestine there are a very, like you can say, small finger like structures, villi structures actually. What they do is, it's kind of this, they in the lining of the small intestine. So what happens is, they will increase your surface area. So what they do, they increase the surface area for the absorption of all these micronutrients, you can say. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you.